Now, when we talk about branding, I think it's really important to first establish why does this matter? And I know just looking around the room, a lot of you know, because a lot of you have gone through that journey of building your own brand. But it's good to bring us all back to reality. Why is that a topic we should care about at 8:30 in the morning in such a wonderful conference? Now, many people that we work with, and we typically work with board-level executives, with women and men who search their first board seat, with senior executives that would like to have a CEO position or another C-level position, we often get certain questions around branding. Why should I care? Now, especially from women, we always get the question, well, you know, I do great quality work. You can see in my CV, I'm very accomplished. Everyone will see that. And for sure, there's going to be a promotion, there's going to be a board seat, there's going to be another step in my career. The reality is that brand building is critical, especially if you're a senior. It is not obvious just by doing great work that the next step is in your future. In fact, studies have shown that you need a sponsor to get to the next level, and brands help with having a sponsor. You are much more likely to get either promoted or find the next job if someone is supporting you. Another question we often get, and a worry especially from female executives, is if I do this, I will stand out. I will be perceived as a diva. I will not be liked anymore by others because it will be perceived as too much about me. And that's uniquely female, even for very senior, accomplished women. Now, the reality is that at the senior executive level, at the board level, it cannot be about popularity. It's about authenticity. And we will talk about authenticity as a key tenet of your personal and professional brand. You have to find what you stand for, and you have to stick with it. Popularity is not going to get you the board seat or the executive position. Another comment, especially from corporate women, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, of women in creative industries, but what we hear a lot is, well, you know, I'm not a social media influencer, I'm not creative, I don't really need this. I work for a very strong corporate brand, and that gives me a brand as well. The reality is that the more senior you get, the more it is about your personal brand, and the less it should be about the corporate brand. Because you don't know if the corporate brand is going to be there in the future. Changes happen. There are events happening to corporates, and you want to make sure that you have your own brand that's valuable in the market. And the last one is about time. I am already busy. I don't have time to spend on this. Very relatable, very understandable, but also a fallacy, because once you have done that initial investment into your own brand, it will save you time down the line. It will save you time when you do business development. It will save you time because you don't have to explain your story over and over and over again. All of these are reasons why you should care. You should care at the beginning of your career, but you will not have as much material to build up. But if you do this consistently over time, you will build your brand, and you should particularly care if you are very senior, because this is the time when the brand is the strongest and when it also allows you to give back. Now, before we go into how can you build your brand, a very important distinction, identity and brand. And there is a big difference for corporates, but also for executives. Your identity is a very specific concept. You are not only one person. You have multiple identities. You are the executive, you are the mother, you are the friend, you are the mentor, you are the accomplished ballroom dancer, and you are the auditor. You have many different identities in yourself that all together make up the puzzle of who you are. It is often not purpose-built, it is subconscious. There's a lot that comes from your upbringing, from your education, which you haven't chosen. It is part of you, and you incorporate it into yourself. And identity changes. You get married, suddenly you have an identity as a wife. you change your position, you find a new passion in sustainability, and it becomes part of your identity. Identity evolves, identity changes. There's a core that stays the same, but it is a fluid concept. A brand is conscious. It is purpose-built. You work on it. It just doesn't happen by accident. It is clear and it is stable over time, because the more reliable your brand is, the more recognizable you are in your company, in your environment, in the market, in the community. What you stand for personally or professionally is important, but more important for a brand is what others perceive you to be. You can say, I stand for environmental protection. If that's not communicated, if that is something you do in your own time, no one knows about it, it is not your brand. If you want this to be your brand, you have to purposefully establish it and work on it. Also, word of warning, the more senior you get, you will have a brand. If you don't take charge of your narrative, someone else will. It's better you are ahead of your story than you leave this open to others' interpretation. Especially for women, that is very true. So many women focus so much on delivering on the different elements of their life, in their personal life, in their community life, in their work life, that they forget about this aspect. A brand is going to be established, but you should be in charge of the narrative. If you don't do that early enough, you have to work even harder to correct it later on. And the more senior you get, the more this is true. Now, connected to that is authenticity. Building a brand that's not authentic to you, you can do, but is highly ineffective. So, just an example for me, I am not a fashion person. Can I build a brand around me with a lot of professional support, with people that take photo shoots, with me looking at articles, posting, using social media? I probably can. It's just not authentic, and it will be found out. The first time you see me in jeans and t-shirt in the playground with my daughters, it will be very obvious that this is just a facade. We have seen that a lot, that people have built a brand and suddenly the brand collapsed. And the disappointment is big. As a professional businesswoman, you do not want this to happen. So what's really important is you need to understand your identity first so that you can be authentic. Typically, it's difficult to do this by yourself. Only through introspection, it will be very difficult for you to understand how you're being perceived. What do others see about you? You might have a very different view of that. So you typically need input from outside to understand what is currently your brand and what do you want it to be and what do you have to do in order to get there. So authenticity is key. The best brands are built on authenticity, reliability, consistency. It's the same message, but from different angles. If you care about, let's say, female empowerment, you can care about that from your professional corporate angle because you mentor women leaders in your company. You can care about from your personal angle because you go to school and you teach students about it. You can care about it from your community angle because you volunteer in certain institutions. So as soon as you find the topic for your brand, all your identities, all your different multifacets of your life can work on that brand together so that it's integrated and it's real. Now, a strong personal brand has to reflect who you are, and you will build on it over time. I just want to briefly highlight one example of how this works and why this is important. I'm German by origin, so this is an example that feels very natural to me. So our former Chancellor, Angela Merkel, very well known. Her brand, probably very recognizable, not only the visual brand of being extremely consistent when it comes to outfits, when it comes to hand gestures, when it comes to how she presents herself, but the messages, the content. Many people might not know that about her, but of course she grew up in Eastern Germany before the fall of the wall. She's the daughter of a priest. She was politically very active. She's a scientist, and she married a scientist. She has a PhD. So she is a very, very rational, data-oriented person. And she has been so from the beginning of her career. But what she also is she is very passionate about certain topics. And that's what brought her into politics. She wanted change in the country. So at the beginning of her career, she was a protege. She managed with her strong brand of being a very rational, very precise scientist to get a high-level sponsor. She had the former chancellor before her and the chairman of her party sponsoring her. And her first role was actually the Minister for Families in Germany after the wall came down. She was very consistent. She always stood for very unexcited data, facts, rationality in the government, reliability, and she always emphasized the European thought. For her, it was always about, we want to be part of the European concept. Those were her messages. Reliability, stability in the economy, in the society, and in the concert of the European nations. She has done that throughout her entire career. And that's what made her a reliable partner. And this brand was so strong that even in times when her popularity ratings and approval ratings were extremely, extremely low, there were times when she had an 11% popularity rating in Germany because people disagreed with her policies. But it didn't matter. She didn't care for the popularity. She didn't want to win the popularity contest. She was on brand, and she said, if that's not what you like, you can change me. But I will stick to what I believe is the right thing to do. That made her such a reliable partner that she left office with a 72% approval rating. So throughout her career, she stuck to what her brand is. And again, you can see that very consistently. She was extremely recognizable in her role. So she earned her respect, and she earned a lot of influence just by having a very, very strong, authentic brand that was linked to her identity. She didn't make it up. It was really her. Now, of course, she had a very long career as well, so she had time to build on that. Building a brand is not something you do overnight, and it often needs help. There are just a few learnings before I hand over to Julia, who has a lot more examples and substance on that, but some learnings that are really important to bear in mind when you think about your brand or what it is today and what you want it to be. Today you are a multifaceted identity. You have different aspects. It's a rich tapestry of who you are. One word doesn't typically describe you as a person. For a brand, you need an elevator pitch. Whomever you introduce yourself in this audience, for example, you should have the one sentence that explains why you're here, what you do, who you are, what you are about. A brand is concise, and a brand is something that you live with every facet of your identity. The second one is, it's not just an item on your to-do list. So if you say, okay, I understand now, I have to build a brand, I'm senior, I'd like to join a board, I need to write a board biography at some point to talk to people like Laura, I'll add it to the to-do list, I'll get to it at some point. Embrace the exercise. It's a journey where you first understand your identity, who you are, what is credible about you, and you ask questions about how others see you, and sometimes it's interesting what you learn about yourself. Embrace this as an exercise in getting to know yourself better. It's not a task on the to-do list. It is really a transformation and an understanding about yourself. And then get help. Typically, building a very strong executive brand is not something you just do internally. You ask colleagues, you ask for feedback, you try to understand how others have done it. It's a process where you should enlist help. You don't have to do this by yourself. And be open to listen. Sometimes when you hear what people think about your current brand, it's not what you want to hear. It is very different from how you perceive yourself. That can be good, that can be bad, but you have to listen and you have to accept it because this is your current brand, and if you want to shift it, you have to consciously work on it. Another topic that is dear to my heart for female executives in particular is the networking topic. In general, executives, but in particular women, overemphasize what Harvard sociologist Robert Putnam calls the bonding capital. You network within your industry, within your company, within your community, within the industry, or within the function that you are in. So you attend the conferences for your specific area. Chances are you meet a lot of people like you in these conferences. So standing out from that crowd is very difficult because many have a similar biography, they might have similar stories, they have similar interests. You need what is called the bridging capital, and this is a fantastic example of something like that. You network across industries, where on a table like this in a CFO conference, you would all be sitting with CFOs. So yeah, you can bond, you can share, you can commiserate, but standing out is difficult. Right now, there are many different individuals on every table, across industries, across countries. You might be the only CFO on that table. So this is much more interesting. You can actually see how to position yourself. What's the standout factor? So bridging capital is important. Many executives, male or female, don't do that often enough and strategic and consistently enough. But it is critical for you to really establish your brand also outside of the area that you're already known in and where everyone is very similar to you. And the last one, and that again is particular for women always difficult, do good, be good at your job, be successful, but talk about it. And it feels unnatural and it feels wrong to self-promote because that's something that has been taught and that has been always ingrained in us. But it is critical. Without that, it is very difficult. When we do executive searches, we take references. Not only of people that have worked with you very closely, but of people who might know of you to understand what your reputation in the market is. If people say, never heard about that person, no idea, maybe she's good, maybe she's not, no, I don't know. It doesn't mean you're a strong influencer in your industry. If you don't want to do that to yourself, have others do it on your behalf. Try to find conferences where you, thought pieces, position yourself, go into associations. There is always a way, if that is something that is not your nature and you cannot overcome that, how you can enlist your ecosystem to help with that. Voluntarily or involuntarily, they might know or not, but point is, you need to do this. And especially for women, that's something that we often see when they come to us and they say, I've had 25 years as a senior executive, I would now like to go on a board. And we ask them, let's write your board biography. What are your key successes? They find it very difficult to talk about it. And they have. And we help them and we talk with them. But point is, you should have that as an elevator speech. You should not need someone to ask you that question to be able to say it and not reflect on it first. So these are just some learnings from our end. Authenticity is critical. You have to know yourself, you have to know your identity to link your brand. And a brand is going to happen. So better be ahead of the narrative and take charge of your own brand building.